The Mariners are down in Denver for a 3-game set with the Rockies, which is supposed to start tonight, but weather might get in the way of that. We'll talk about that and get you set for the rest of the series coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, April 19th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use the promo code LockedOnMLB. That's all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And once again, the Mariners are down in Denver for a 3-game set with the Colorado Rockies, which is supposed to kick off tonight. But right now, last time that I checked on my phone, 30% chance of rain between 7 and 10 o'clock local time. The Mariners are set for a 6:40 first pitch against the Rockies. So it's possible we might be in store for a doubleheader either tomorrow or Sunday. And the reason why I mentioned Sunday is because there's also snow in the forecast for tomorrow. Now, that right now is supposed to happen overnight. It's supposed to happen during the AM, and it's supposed to just be cloudy the rest of the day, especially when the Mariners are supposed to play the Rockies tomorrow, but you never know. These things change, right? So that said, though, Colby, the Mariners seem, especially with the off day yesterday, they have an off day scheduled on Monday. You know, if the game gets postponed today, they would have another off day. They should be set up pretty well for a doubleheader whenever that could happen.
You know, they're going to get this game in at some point. We know Major League Baseball will try very, very hard to make sure it gets played this weekend because, you know, screw the players and their health. As long as, you know, we get our 3 games this weekend and we get, you know, those 8,000 people showing up to the Rockies games in the snow, like we'll get these suckers played. So, yeah, you know, and I know that the weather forecast seems like, you know, decent chance they play at least one of the next 2 days, if not both. But the thing about Colorado weather is that it changes on a dime and it is highly unpredictable. So, you know, it could say snow in the morning and just snow overnight. And you could wake up in the morning and you could have 8 inches of snow. And that wasn't in the forecast at all. So it seems like they're going to be able to get at least 2 of these games in because at the very least, you could play a doubleheader on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like 65 and sunny. So you can at least get 2 of these games in. And like Ty said, because the Mariners have a day off on Monday, you know, they can more or less salvage their bullpen despite having a doubleheader, which is not something you want this early in the year. If you can help it, it is pretty taxing on your bullpen. And since they don't do 7-inning doubleheaders anymore, you're going to have guys who are probably going to have to throw twice in the same day. And that's typically not something you want guys doing really ever, but particularly this early in the year. So a little bit of concern here that they can't get the games in. The doubleheader is not ideal, but just the way that the schedule happened to break for Seattle, if you're going to have one of these, this would be the week to do it because you just had Thursday off and now you're going to get Monday off no matter what. So, you know, not ideal, but if you told me that a doubleheader was going to happen at some point this year, this would probably be the best weekend for it to happen to Seattle.
So the forecast is slightly changed. Now it says that rain is supposed to start at 6 o'clock local time, so before first pitch. So still 30%, but now that rain is supposed to turn into snow at about 8 o'clock local time. So like you mentioned, you never know. This can change at the drop of a hat. Right. So we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, it seems like Sunday should be good to go for a doubleheader, whether they're able to get Saturday played or not. And then if they have to postpone one of these games to a future date, Curtis Rogers, 710 Seattle Sports, Listed a few shared off days the Rockies and Mariners have. Those are May 16th, June 27th, July 25th, August 5th, and September 9th. So potentially those days they could make up one of these games.
And you would sure like it to be a situation where Seattle's coming back from, the East and they just stop off in Denver and then they finish their flight to Seattle, or they're heading out to the East. And so they're flying out. So they just stop in Denver and then they continue their flight. You'd like that to be the case. You don't want them to be like, oh yeah, well on this day they're in Tampa and then they're supposed to be in Cleveland the next day. So then it goes Tampa, Denver, then you go back out to Cleveland. So
May 16th, they are leaving Seattle to go to the East Coast to play the Orioles, Yankees, and Nationals. So
Right.
in theory, they could stop in Colorado for the 16th and then head to Baltimore right after that.
Right.
June, what was it? What did I say? 27th? Yeah, June 27th. They are heading home from Tampa Bay.
Okay.
So they could do that. July 25th.
Also matters where Colorado's coming from.
Right. July 25th, they're leaving home to go to south side of Chicago to play the White Sox. August 5th, they are they have an off day in between home series.
That's going to be their least likely day then.
And then September 9th, they are heading back from St. Louis.
Yeah, so pretty much all the dates would work fine except for the August one. Having an off day at home is very rare. I don't think the Mariners are going to want to give that up to fly to Denver and then fly right back. I don't think they're going to want to give up that off day.
Right. Though, at the very least, not that long of a flight, not that inconvenient of a flight, but just for the players in general, that's pretty inconvenient.
Yep.
Just having to make that trip
Having
and
an
losing that
off
off
day at
day.
home,
Yeah.
it is pretty rare. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're actually going to get you set for the series whenever it starts in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKEDON, and make your first bet an automatic win. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. It's time to get you ready for the Mariners-Rockies series, which, again, maybe it starts tonight, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? I'm sure we'll find out here in a few hours. This is one of the worst teams in baseball, the Colorado Rockies. They are 4-15 heading into the series, but the Coors Field effect, right? A lot of homers, a lot of high-scoring games. Things can get pretty wild down there. So what are your feelings heading into this one, Colby?
Yeah, I think on paper you feel really good about it. You have the pitching advantage in at least 2 of the 3 games, and I think even tonight with Hancock's inconsistencies, you'd still have to call this at least a push.
That's the nicest thing you've said about Emerson Hancock.
Yeah, high bar to clear. So you have to feel pretty good about that. Bullpen should be in really good shape because you just had the off day yesterday. And, well, just in general, your starting pitching has been getting deep into games as well. So bullpen should be in good shape. You have better arms than they do. On paper, your offense is better. The only real concern I have, or I guess not the only one, but the biggest concern I have is actually Coors Field itself. It's not because, the ball travels, so the Rockies might hit some more home runs than they otherwise would. It's actually because of how big the outfield is, and Seattle's outfield defense. Let's just say they haven't made that a priority in like a decade. So while Julio's very good out there, you're probably talking about Mitch Haniger in right field. I mean, he kind of struggles to cover right field in Seattle, so I don't know how he's going to do in Coors. And then Clase, while very fast, not a very good defender. And so there could be some interesting routes. And this is a ballpark where you take a bad route to a ball, it turns a double into a triple, or It allows the guy to score from first on, what should be, just a routine double. So it's kind of a tricky ballpark. Also, the playing surface is going to be wet, more than likely for the first two games if they play them. So throwing can be an issue, but also just footing in general could be an issue. So, a little bit concerned about how Seattle's defense plays on a field that is less than ideal. But you can't let that be an excuse. You're the better ball club. You got to come in to Colorado and you got to take at least 2 of 3 because that's what you should do. Like, is it a disaster if they lose this series? No, nothing's a disaster in April unless it's health related. But this is a team that you really should take 2 of 3, and you have to think sweep could be on the table, and certainly the vibes of the team change quite a bit if you win 6 in a row, heading down to take on the defending World Series champions. So, who are also starting to play better baseball. So we'll see what they do, but yeah, they got to win 2 out of 3. I feel pretty confident they will do that, and then we'll see. It's baseball, and more specifically, it's Mariners baseball. So chaos is always going to play a role, and chaos works both ways. So could go in the Mariners' favor. Chaos also works the other way. So this could be one of those disappointing series at the end of the day. But on paper, there's no excuse for the Mariners not to take this series.
This feels like a good ballpark and a good pitching staff to pick up where they left off from that Red series against, especially for Julio. This feels like a really good opportunity for Julio to get his first home run. It's at least 2 righties, potentially 3, depending on who replaces Freeland on Saturday. So I would like to think that Luke Raley is going to play quite a bit in this series. But what are your expectations on that front?
Assuming it's 3 righties, I would like to see Luke Raley play all 3 games, and you could do it with 1 in left, 1 in right, 1 at first, pretty easily. I would actually like to see Haniger get one of these games off and have Raley play right field twice. Haniger DHing the other day. So, yeah, I want my best defensive outfield I can get out there, particularly for this ballpark, and that is Raley in right, Julio in center, and then it's either Dylan Moore or Clase in left. I think Moore's actually better, but Clase is certainly faster, so maybe that's something you want to try and finagle there. And we know that Clase is going to play, so he's going to play in at least 2 of these games. I'd be pretty shocked if he didn't. So, I think I would like Raley to play right field at least twice in this series. The other game could go to Haniger, and then Haniger can DH a day, give Garver a day off, blah, blah, blah. So, I think that's how you line up. And then because it's against the righties, so far it seems pretty clear that third base is kind of a strict platoon, which means Josh Rojas will get the starts there. Urias will, if they move up Gomer or whoever, and I think he started yesterday, so that's probably not a possibility, but they go to a lefty on Saturday or game 2 or whatever, then Urias would probably get that start there. So other than that, I think it's pretty standard. JP is going to be back at short. He's got back-to-back days off now.
Yep.
So I expect him at short all 3 games, even if there's a lefty on the mound on Saturday. And then it's Polanco, France, Julio, Cal. My guess is Cal starts all 3 games as well, because again, they just had the day off on Thursday and they had the day off on Monday. So I don't think we're going to see Sevy in this series. Maybe if you win the first 2, maybe you're willing to take a little bit of that shot and you can give Cal back-to-back days off. But yeah, I think it's going to be.
If there's a doubleheader, he's probably not playing the second game.
Right. So you play a doubleheader, then you'll see Sevy in game 2 or game 1, whichever one they think is the better matchup for Cal.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's going to be pretty standard. I really do hope we see Raley at least twice in the outfield, though, because again, you need your best defense out there on days like today. And, not for nothing, Haniger on a slick field with his injury history, feels like a good day to maybe back off, a good series to back off a little bit and give him at least 1 day off and then maybe 1 DH day. But Seattle pretty much appears dead set on just treating him like an everyday player until the wheels fall off. So who knows?
I would expect Haniger's going to play at least 2 of these 3 games, and he's probably going to get a start at least in the outfield, probably 2, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And I would assume Clase is probably going to play at least 2 of these 3 games as well, because, the Scott Service said He's up here to play. He's not up here to ride the bench. He's not up here just to, replace that spot that Dom Canzone's injury opened. Like, he is going to get into the lineup quite a bit. And, like we talked about yesterday, that might negatively impact Rayleigh's playing time, right? So as a result.
Yeah, I'd be pretty annoyed if they're not going to give Luke Rayleigh an opportunity to hit against Dakota Hudson and Cal Quantrill.
Right.
Those feel like pretty good matchups for Luke. So we'll see what they want to do.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right. We're going to get into these pitching matchups in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Spring training is over and baseball season is in full swing. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. You can also get in on the basketball playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason. Speaking of hoops, I'm taking DeMontis Sabonis more than 18.5 points and De'Aaron Fox less than 27.5 points against the Pelicans on Friday. Download Prize Picks today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen as we get you set for the Mariners-Rockies series, which again might start tonight, might not start. We'll see. But whenever it does start, it's going to be Emerson Hancock on the bump against Dakota Hudson. This feels like a bad matchup for him just based on ballpark alone.
It's not the lineup that's going to scare me much, in regards to Hancock, but it is the ballpark, and it is the fact that, yes, despite him going 6, innings of 2-run ball against the Cubs, he gave up 11 hard hit balls in that game. 61% hard hit rate. And if you have a 61% hard hit rate in Colorado, you're probably giving up more than 2 runs. So I am concerned about that, and I'm concerned about how the fastball is going to play. It's been a little hit or miss with the fastball. When he locates it exactly where he wants it to go, he gets pretty good results on it. If he's off by an inch or two, it usually gets hit pretty hard. So. I'm concerned about Hancock, more so because Hancock himself, not necessarily the lineup that the Rockies are throwing out there.
Luis Castillo gets the start tomorrow, or at least currently scheduled to get the start tomorrow. We don't know who's going to pitch for the Rockies. Kyle Freeland, of course, landing on the IL with that arm injury. So Castillo, we've talked about this. It's been a command issue for the most part, not really a stuff issue, specifically a command issue out of the stretch. That's been a real problem area for Luis so far. He's given up 3 home runs already this season as well in 4 starts. Not great. And obviously, this ballpark again leads to a lot of home runs. So how are you feeling about Luis pitching in this ballpark? The struggles that he's gone through?
Pretty good. He had his best start of the year in his last outing. Appeared that he figured some stuff out with the changeup and the slider. The 2-run home run he gave up was on the changeup. I think it was the changeup. Might have been the slider, but it's not on the off-speed pitch. The fastball was a little bit better. And, you don't know right now with Luis. You don't know because, again, kind of like Hancock, this isn't so much about, hey, what can the Rockies do to him that might make him struggle? Well, nothing. If he's throwing quality strikes, very few teams can do anything to Luis Castillo to kind of induce a struggle. But for Castillo, if he doesn't have, at least 50 command and control or 45 command and control, I'd take, then he's going to get hit. He's going to get hit hard because, the stuff right now has a tendency to kind of leak out arm side. And typically that means it's either a ball, like significantly, because he's trying to start it on the outside corner. It's running into the batter's box. Or he's starting it off on the inside corner to a lefty, and it's running into the middle of the plate. So he doesn't have a lot of command, or he hasn't had a lot of command with the fastball yet. We saw more in Chicago, still made a couple mistakes against the Cubs. But overall, it was better, 24 whiffs. The stuff is not been a problem this year whatsoever, even in his bad outings. The stuff is plenty good. So for Castillo, it's just all about quality strikes. If he can throw quality strikes, then he will force the Rockies to expand the zone on themselves. And that's how he's going to get a lot of Ks, and that's how he's going to get a lot of weak contact. And that's what you want to see in Colorado. A lot of ground balls and a lot of strikeouts.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly on Sunday, which we know at least one game will be played on Sunday, George Kirby against Cal Quantrill. Kirby had a couple of rough starts there against the Guardians and the Blue Jays, but bounced back very nicely against the Reds a few days ago. We saw the new slider, right? The new slider grip, and that obviously produced some really good results for him, like we talked about after that game. So I assume we're going to see that again. Overall expectations for Kirby in that start, and then you got anything on Cal Quantrill for us?
Yeah, Kirby again. I mean, it sounds like a broken record, but this is just how good the Mariners starting pitching is. If they have their normal, like if they hit their command and control goals, they're going to be fine. They're going to give you a good chance to win. And it's especially important for somebody like Kirby, because when Kirby misses, he doesn't have Luis Castillo's stuff where, oh, I missed, but my stuff's so good that like it doesn't matter. Like I still got a whiff. Kirby doesn't have that stuff. Kirby has good stuff, not great stuff. So if he's, not sporting a, 60 command and control grade, then he's liable to get, roughed up a little bit. And so we'll see what the Rockies game plan is. Typically, teams have attacked Kirby by being very aggressive early in the count. And again, we've seen that work against Kirby. We've also seen that backfire hysterically bad against him. And it all comes down to how he's controlling particularly his off-speed pitches. And then, also we got to see what kind of zone he has. If the zone is larger on Sunday, then that's a huge advantage to George because he can pitch off the corners a little bit more. But yeah, I think you're going to see. A heavy fastball slider game from George, and then he'll mix in the split to the handful of lefties that will be in the lineup. But I think it's all about the fastball and then the slider. Fastball. Kirby's not really a guy who can survive on two pitches. Not in the long term. He might be able to do it for a start or two, but he needs, 2, 3, he needs 3, 4 pitches and his command, because again, the stuff is, again, it's not bad stuff. It's not even average stuff. It's above average stuff, but it's not great. It's not elite, right? So he kind of needs multiple pitches in an outing, and he needs to be able to throw the ball more or less where he wants to. And he did a much better job of that in his last start.
Yeah. So, and then Quantrill, you got anything for us on Quantrill? He's someone that I remember, back in the offseason, you said you would take a flyer on him.
Not going to strike a lot of guys out. He's running a 12% strikeout rate right now, 7.1% walk rate, which isn't bad. So he's going to throw strikes. He's going to get ground balls, 46% ground ball rate right now. But you look at the numbers overall right now, 5.57 ERA, 5.63 FIP, 4.90 xFIP. He's giving up a lot of hard contact. So it's on the ground. So he's limiting damage a little bit, but 15% home run to fly ball rate, not great in Coors Field, not awful, but not great. So yeah, he's going to be around the strike zone. He's probably not going to walk you. It's not plus control and command, but it's average, solid average, maybe a little bit above average, but it's pretty mediocre stuff. And honestly, it's very similar to what Dakota Hudson's going to throw tonight. Dakota Hudson, a 15% strikeout rate, 8.2% walk rate. So very average stuff from these guys, average control, but they get the ball in the ground for the most part. And so it's your job when they leave a pitch elevated to get it in the air, to do damage off of it. They'll walk you on occasion, but it's not, you can't just expect them to, walk you around the bases. You have to be ready to swing. They're going to throw enough strikes and they're going to try and get you to beat the ball into the ground. You have to elevate against them. And obviously that's how you'll do a lot of damage as well. So, just kind of classic number 4, number 5, sinker, slider, get you to hit the ball on the ground types. Honestly, probably I haven't dug too deep into their arsenals yet, but kind of the way that Emerson Hancock wants to try and get you out is essentially you get yourself out against them. That's what they're going for.
That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, once again, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. The Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next week. Peace.